welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to film this earlier and then it was way too hot in this room and my camera got overheated and kept dying on me in the middle of my thoughts. So that was fun. I am not in my usual location because I am at a hotel. I am city hopping to visit some friends, so I actually have some downtime right now because I have to meet my friend when he gets done with work at 5:30, and then we're going to go to the museum and we're going to eat dinner and we're just going to catch up. So that'll be fun times, but in the meantime, I'm trying to be productive and get a video filmed, get some writing in. But I've really been wanting to stop and sit down and film this because it's been a big conversation the past few days. So over the weekend, there was this drama on book Twitter between authors and reviewers, and points were made, and then it got out of hand once it went outside of the book community, and then the incels decided to make all their disgusting threats. And that tends to happen a lot when we have discussions, like they go outside of the community, incels hop on board, then take advantage, and then it just becomes, you guys are harassing an author, you're not allowing them to make mistakes, blah 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 blah, and things get lost. So basically, there's an author who is a 2024 debut. There was one viral tweet that was saying she is being harassed, has been harassed on like the past few weeks by reviewers, and they're just hating on a woman of color who is trying to write a dark romance. And it was a long thread, but that wasn't actually the full context, because then there were a bunch of quotes on it from various people who actually did read the arc, and they were like, well, I'm the same background as the author. They were Chinese reviewers, and she specifically said this story was inspired by Chinese genocide, but then she did like this enemies to lovers colonizer romance. And this is not the first time that enemies to lovers colonizer romance has been a discourse on Twitter. A couple of months ago, Bethany Baptiste actually made a really good thread about how colonizer romance is not enemies to lovers, and people lost their fucking shit. And I don't understand why, because it's not. And I noticed fantasy gives people the audacity to think that they can try and romanticize this. And authors are always like, oh, I'm trying to subvert it. I'm trying to tell a different type of story, and then it's always the same story over and over again of falling in love with somebody who hates you. That idea that love conquers all, that if we all just get together and have sex and make babies, that racism will be solved, and that's not how it works at all. And so in the case of this particular course, then the author was saying that she didn't do anything wrong, and then like there was this whole side beef between her and another author and the author's reviewer sister. I know the people involved, but I'm not going to get too much into the details because I honestly couldn't piece together all the screenshots on either side, and I believe the truth is somewhere in the middle in regards to that. So do I think that the author doxed people? No, because I couldn't find any proof of doxing. However, she did reveal information about the author without saying their name, about them having a deal that was not announced yet, and people could kind of easily put together like if you are in the community, you could have kind of easily put together the pieces of who is involved. So that wasn't cool. And also, she wrote a damn dissertation. If you weren't harassing reviewers, why are you writing a dissertation? Like, this was paragraphs after paragraphs trying to explain her point. Like, if people are lying on you, you don't need to go that hard trying to defend yourself. It was like ridiculous, because then she's like, my agent told me not to put this out, and I put it out anyway. Put it out. This thing was like unreadable. I was noticing like a lot of things that didn't make sense in it, And then she came back with like a shortened version, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna have to say that you definitely were kind of harassing reviewers, because it just made no sense that a big account put out this narrative that you were being unfairly attacked by reviewers. And we didn't even know who these people were prior to this one side beef. Like, so I do think that this author was attacking viewers, which is also never okay. And it just brought up a larger conversation of, should we critique BIPOC authors? Because that was like the biggest defense. Is like, well, she's a BIPOC woman and you're attacking her. Again, we don't need to harass authors. We don't need to be nasty and disgusting. And honestly, the worst stuff that I saw did not even come from our community. Again, it came from the incel, but I feel like people are putting it on the book community because the discourse started within the book community. But we should be able to critique these stories. I've seen a lot of people scared because we're getting these books out now by these 2024 debuts. A lot of them were unfairly attacked in the Kate Crane situation, and now people are like, well, I don't want to talk about their book in any type of critical way because I don't want people to accuse me of attacking them, which is unfair. But also, I feel like if people from your own community are reading your book and they have a problem with it, they should be able to say that and call you out for it. I'm not saying go and tag the author, but I'm saying they should be able to put it in their reviews and be vocal about it if they want to, like on social media or something. And I remember a couple of years back, We Need Diverse Books had this little article that basically just says, don't say tropes are overused. And it was basically a puff piece. Like, it said a whole lot of nothing. It didn't like talk about how tropes are in every story, but certain tropes trend higher than others or anything like that. It was just saying like, BIPOC authors have never had the chance to use tropes before, so let them use it without saying anything. And I didn't like when they were saying that. For one, it starts off the idea that we never had BIPOC books before. That is a lie that constantly gets pushed, especially in the YA space. I find online, like, they constantly act like there were no BIPOC books until recently, and that is just not true, because I was reading them when I was a teen. They were harder to find, but they were there, and people in those communities were enjoying them. But also, like, there are a lot of tropes that are way overused, especially in the fantasy and romance spaces, and publishers work hard to try and make every book fit into that box, even if it doesn't necessarily fit into that box. And you can always tell, like, when an author came up with the tropes first and then decided to build the story around it, because they never quite fit. And there's definitely ones that are overused, like enemies to lovers is a big one. And colonizer romance is not enemies to lovers. You cannot fit that into that space. For a true enemies to lovers, you need them to have equal footing. You can't just have one side oppressing the shit out of people, killing their family members, burning down their villages, but it's okay. Main character falls in love with them, all good. That's not how it works. And I feel like when We Diverse Books put out that piece, then I started seeing like educators and reviewers and librarians and whoever jumping on it like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. And then they were using it to say, well, we shouldn't critique BIPOC stories at all, because that's what I ended up seeing. Like, I remember reading a professional review of a book, and the book was badly written. I'm like, it was not well developed. And straight up in the review, the reviewer wrote, said, it used tropes and tropes are good. BIPOC authors should be allowed to use tropes. Like, but that's not a review. It doesn't tell you anything constructive about the book. Like, she had some popular YA tropes in them, but like they weren't done well. They weren't developed. And if it's not done well, we shouldn't just be giving them a free pass just because they're non-white. Especially when we think about how publishing loves to fit people of color into a box. They want these stories to read like their white counterparts. And I know when I read books that or like short stories or anything that comes from like outside of US that does not get filtered through US publishing, it reads completely different. Like the voice, like the way they use language, everything. So there's definitely like particular styles for certain cultures, and we don't see enough of that. Publishing, like I said, wants everything to fit into a neat little box and read like the popular white stories. So this to say, I strongly believe that we should be able to critique BIPOC books, especially if you are in that community or conversation with that community, because I know it's come up a few times too where people were like, well, I want the own voices reviewer critique when something harmful was called out in a book. And then the people from that community had to come and be like, yeah, this was bad, here's my review. And I definitely think that the people from that community, their word holds more weight, but other people should also be able to point out when things are wrong, unless they're misconstruing a point in the book, because that is another thing. Like, the only time I think an author should jump in and push back against the critiques of reviewers like that is if people are spreading false information about their book. Like, for example, with Son of the Storm, the author did end up having to jump in and say something on Goodreads because people were trying to say that the book was racist against Asian people because one of the characters is called Yellow Skin. If you are from the black community, you know the yellow is used for light-skinned people. And in this particular instance, everybody in the book was black. It was inspired by fantasy West Africa, and yellow skin was referring to a character with albinism. This was clearly, explicitly explained on page. There was no confusion. There was no assumptions that could have been made that this had anything to do with any Asian characters. So I not only feel for the author having to jump in and say something, as he should, because people were just spreading lies. Same with when I read The Sun in the Void and people were calling it anti-indigenous and spreading all this bullshit mess and trying to say she was ableist and this and that. Now, as far as I saw, the author never jumped in and said anything, but I would not have blamed her if she did, because I ended up saying something because I actually read the book and I'm like, you guys are making shit up. Like, and it felt like a targeted attack against her when she wasn't being anti-indigenous. It's that a lot of people in South America are anti-indigenous, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. Like, we have like some indigenous ancestry in my family, and then like we have specific people who have direct connections to those groups. Like my cousin is half indigenous, and then his wife is indigenous as well. And there are certain like slurs and stuff that are just like everyday language for people, no matter how many times they tell like them it's offensive. And you see like little ways it comes out, and for the most part, the indigenous groups, from what I've seen in South America, tend to stay within their own communities. So the author was inspired by South America, but the book wasn't set in South America, so like some of the stuff that they were saying, like she was being anti-indigenous because they the characters were called ugly and had tails and horns and stuff. Well, they were a fantasy race. That's why they had tails and horns and stuff. And yes, people were being anti-indigenous towards them. That was the fucking point, that they are an oppressed people. And people were calling them names and treating them terribly. And that was something that the main characters in that book had to deal with. So I definitely believe that authors should push back against criticism when it's unfounded. However, if so many people from your particular community especially are saying there's something wrong in a book, you as the author shouldn't talk over them. You as the author should not be fighting with reviewers. You as the author should not be throwing shots at people on page in the book, because I've seen that too. And we as a community need to start actually critiquing these books, because so many books I've seen got praised for talking about certain issues, and then what they actually said about the issue was very hollow or just a mess altogether. Like, the author clearly didn't know what they were talking about, but they were getting praised as if they knew what they were talking about. And then that doesn't help, because then one, it's spreading harmful information, and then two, we don't get better, because then these books get pushed as a standard to try and aspire to for various BIPOC authors, and then they're just really not saying anything. So that's just my thought on the being able to critique books by BIPOC authors. Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!